This thing came out in what, like 1983? It feels like it's been that long since I've done an update. Welcome back to the Skill Builders Guild. Thanks again for watching. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're taking another look at the team-associated RC10. And it's almost done. Yes, it's running. It actually has a motor in it, and an ESC, and a steering servo, and all the bits and pieces, thanks to many of my very, very generous fans and viewers out there. It's almost complete. There are a few things that are still missing and a few things that I decided not to change to get it to be completely spec'd like the original. But let's go through some of the things that have happened since the last video. Well, as you can see, body is trimmed, wing is on, shocks are done. Actually, the entire chassis with electronics is complete. Now, let's go through it from the front to the very back, and we'll kind of take it step by step here. Front, original front A-arms, all of the suspension bits are fairly original. Yes, these are gold shocks. The only issue with this being totally original is that these shock caps are plastic. I have the aluminum ones for the rear. I don't yet have a set for the front. So if there's some enterprising individual out there who wants to see me complete this truck and have it as box stock as possible, I could use a set of those. Also, these are not the original springs. I just had some springs in my spring collection that worked pretty well. Also not the proper Edinger caps up front on these shocks. As you can see, it's just a standard cap, but that's fine. And that's because it's going to be a run car. I'm actually going to go out and run this car as it sits right now. I'm not going to leave it on a shelf. So, you know, if it's not totally 100% original, that's okay. We've got a lot of original parts on here, and I think the whole joy of going through something like this on Throwback Thursday is to get it close enough and to get it outside and have some fun with it, and to show that these vintage cars still have a lot of joy to be given, 20 plus years later. Moving on, let's see. Let me actually address the body. This is the Penguin repop of Mirage body for the RC10. I don't know my history on the bodies so well, so that is kind of a new thing for me. I think it looks pretty good. I think it fits pretty nicely. I was able to keep the holes pretty minimal and make it all fit properly. The wing, this whole assembly at the back here, this is pretty cool. It has the original tabs and the original piano wire style holder for that wing. It's just a friction fit on the actual chassis. So I'm sure they intended that so if you got into a crash or something, it could possibly bend or pop off without breaking the entire rear assembly. Anyway, that's all done. Still trying to determine a good paint job for this car. I think it kind of demands a vintage look. So if you've got any great ideas, by all means, post them down below. There are some really awesome examples out there and some really great painters who do amazing work. And it'll be sort of my goal to sort of replicate some of those vintage style looks. So flake paint, lame, all the really cool stuff I think is going to go into this paint job. All right, let's get this body off and we'll get a closer look at some of the electronics that I chose for this build. The first thing that should strike you, or at least that strikes me when I take the body off, is that the steering knuckles, all of this steering assembly is not original. Those are 3D printed parts. But as you can see, nice smooth movement, everything in the exact place that it should be based on the original design. What I will do eventually is I do have the actual steering parts in white plastic. I figured those are probably the parts that are going to go first, so I'll use 3D printed for now to save me those original parts. This servo is a Power HD 23 kilogram servo, which is massive overkill, but it's what I had in my parts bin. So do not judge me on my overpowering servo ways. This will obviously get swapped out at some point, or maybe I'll just print up a fake sticker on there to make it seem like it's not such an overpowered servo. But once you have your endpoint set, it shouldn't really matter anyway, and we shouldn't be breaking any parts there. Next up, obviously I use some of my wire loom. This is Alex Tech wire loom. You can get it on Amazon. I'll try to find a link and put it below for you. And then I did reuse the original Futaba radio box. This is the original receiver, 27 megahertz. No crystal anymore, of course. I've swapped out the inside electronics with a modern Futaba 603FF, I think, receiver, which is what I use with my 3PMX. A very old radio, almost as old as this car. Not actually, it's obviously not nearly as old, but it is an older radio, still 2.4 gigahertz, and still works fantastic. So I use it in a lot of my older builds. Anything that doesn't require any telemetry or anything, super great radio. And then paired to that is a Tekin BXR, which is a crawler-specific ESC. But it works just fine. You get forward, you get reverse, you can even lock out the reverse if you want and make this a true race car. So doesn't need to be anything more or less. I just thought, because it's so small, because it fits in there so nicely, it was a perfect example and a great way to save some space and also kind of keep things nice and clean in that pan. You'll also notice that I took 2 of the battery trays and placed them laterally through the chassis here, just to kind of even out my weight distribution right to left. I've also paired that BXR with a 35 turn brush motor from Axial. It's a sealed can that I had in my collection, and again, we're not looking to break any speed records with this car, so it doesn't need a ton of power. 35 turn is plenty for me for a car of this vintage. It's really just about getting it outside and actually running it, so that's where that stands. Otherwise, this car's pretty much done. All of everything works. I did some quick tests just to make sure that everything was running properly, and it's a nice, smooth sounding car. It's really, for its age, in pretty decent shape. Oh, on the receiver box, I also mounted up one of the antenna holders here. You don't need a long, super long antenna like you needed back in the day. So I've just put a little stubby antenna on there just to kind of give it a nice, cool look. I'm not sure what the ratio is on the pinion and the spur, but it seemed pretty decent and sprightly for a 35 turn motor in a vintage vehicle. I also reset all of my camber, so now everything seems to sit pretty well, and that suspension is working really nicely. I'm really, really impressed overall with how smooth and how stable everything is for a car of this age. Just for fun, I did try the SPA 480 WT competition motor from Kyosho in this car, and I quickly smoked it. So that is useless. It's probably just way too old and been sitting for way too long. And you know what? It was never really my intention to run that motor anyway. So, you know, I'm glad I had some other crappy motors to throw in there. And we'll just leave that one on the shelf as sort of an example of what used to be. All the steering links are original parts. I'm really kind of pleased with that. It's really cool to have all of those. And again, my thanks to all of my viewers for sending all of these bonus parts my way. I could not have done this build without you. So thank you very much. And hey, if you're enjoying this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you get updates anytime there's a new video from the Scale Builders Guild. I know a lot of you haven't rung that notification bell, but you should. There's a lot of great content and a lot more great content to come, so I hope you will stay tuned. With that, I think we're at the end of this video. The final video will be painting and running. I'll actually take it out to a local bike track and get a few laps on the track. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again soon.